This video is going to cover how to put in floors, roofs, and ceilings in our three-room shed. So I'm doing this from my floor plan view, which if you're not in your floor plan, just go ahead and double click on your floor plan in your project browser. Or if you have a tab at the top, you can also use your tabs here to switch between your two views. And I'm also going to do this with thin lines turned on. So I'm going to have my line weight hidden away, and that is keyboard shortcut TL to make the line weight just disappear. So that way it'll be easier to see if my floor is going to my face of stud on my walls. There are a couple of different ways you can make a floor. The way that I like to do it is create something for like my entire floor system first. That's just going to be like my joist and subfloor. And then I create smaller floors that are kind of hovering above different areas in the building. So of just the finishes. So that's kind of just my preference. But to start, the floor tool is going to be this button here in our architecture tab. It does not have a keyboard shortcut. And once we start the floor tool, it's going to completely gray everything out until we either click this red X to cancel or this green check to create it. And I'm going to use the pick wall option, which is already set by default up here. And I'm going to hover over one of my exterior walls, and then I'm going to tap the tab key on my keyboard and then click to select my whole wall boundary. And now it is already on the face of stud, but if it wasn't, it might be that you were hovering near the inside of the stud, so you can then just click on that to go to the outside of it, your little arrow key to flip it. I want this to go around my whole building, like my porch as well. So I'm going to hit the escape key a couple of times, and then I'm going to click on this line here and delete it. I'm going to click on this line here and delete it so I can recreate my boundary. Now, when you're creating a floor boundary, it has to be a closed loop. And so I'm going to bring these two lines here, or these two edges of the boundary, to meet each other. And to do that, I could just click and drag them, or I could even draw in new ones, but I'm going to use the trim command, or trim extend to corner, which is either this button here or keyboard shortcut TR. And then I can click on the two lines and it'll bring them to meet at a nice little corner for it. Then I'll hit escape 100 times again just to get out of that trim tool. And before I finish my floor, I'm going to make sure that it has my subfloor and my sheathing in there. So right now we're just doing a generic 12-inch floor. I'm going to just click on my properties panel here and I'm going to do this wood truss 12-inch carpet. So this one is the one I'll click, but before I complete it, I'm going to go into my edit type. Then in my properties window, I'm going to duplicate this and call it just wood joist and subfloor. Then I'm going to click on edit the structure and I'm going to just remove this carpet. So I'll delete my carpet and I'll make my wood structure here. Let's make it, let's do, we use 2x8s in the 3-room shed, so let's do another 2x8, so it would be 7¼ inches. And then our plywood sheathing, we can leave at 3/4 of an inch. Then I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click OK. And then to create my floor, I'm going to hit this green check right here. And now if I go look at it 3D, I have a floor hanging out underneath my building. My next step for my floor is I'm going to go back into my level 1 floor plan. And I'm going to create small little floors just inside areas to represent my floor finishes. So back in my floor plan, I'm going to go back into the floor tool by clicking this button here. And then instead of using this wood joist subfloor, I'm going to click on edit type. I'm going to duplicate and I'm going to call this one like bathroom tile. I'm going to edit the structure. I'm going to remove one layer. So now I just only have this layer here, number 2. which even though this isn't going to be a structural layer, we have to give it the function of structure and it has to sit in this core boundary. Something has to be in the core boundary at all times. But I'm going to change its material from plywood. So I'll click on my dot, dot, dot. And then in my material menu here, I'm going to search for tile. And I'm just going to use this 4-inch porcelain tile. So we'll see here that it has a hatch pattern in there. And it also is going to make it purple when we look at it in consistent colors. Keep in mind though, its appearance here, in its appearance tab, it's actually a white tile. So it won't be purple at all. If we want, we can check off this use render appearance to make it look white when we're looking in consistent colors. And then I'll click OK. Its thickness, I'm just going to make an estimate and I'll make it about a 1/4 inch thick or 0.25, which whoops, it doesn't like that I did a 0 space. So that's why it gave me that error because I had a space between the 0 and the decimal point. But I'll make it a 1/4 inch thick. I'll click OK. I'll click OK. And then what I need to pay attention to is this height offset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to offset it up the thickness that I made the material, which is a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to make it a 1/4 inch up. And instead of using pick walls, I'm going to use this line tool. And I'm just going to draw around the interior of my bathroom. And I'll even go kind of across the threshold of it. Now it has to be a closed loop. So I have to meet back here. And once then it's closed, when I hit my green check, we'll see that because I had that surface pattern, we can see that in the floor plan, but also then if I go into my 3D view, I can see that tile hanging out in there. I'll do the same thing within my building footprint. So I'll go back into my level 1 floor plan. I'm going to start a floor. I'm going to go into edit type. I'm going to duplicate it and I'm just going to call this one like wood planks. And then I'll go edit my structure. I'll go edit my material. So let's try wood floor. So we have this oak flooring and we have this wood plank flooring. I'll go with the oak one. I'm going to change the surface pattern though from this 3-inch one to, there's this wood board one that I just kind of like better, or there's even wood board wide. And I'll even show you how we can play around with some of those visual settings. So I'll just use plain wood board. Click OK. I'll click OK. I'll leave its thickness as a 1/4 inch. And I'll click OK. And then I'll click OK one more time. We'll see here that the height offset is already set to a 1/4 inch. Revit's always going to assume you want to do the same thing you already did. And this time, instead of using the line tool, I'm just going to use the rectangle tool to just draw a rectangle from one interior corner of my building to the other interior corner of my building. And then again, I'll hit my green check. And now I have wood flooring or wood planks inside my building on my finish in there as well. So that's just kind of how I like to do finishes. There's a bunch of different ways they can be done though for it. Now, let's hit escape a couple times just to make sure we're not in the floor tool. One problem that sort of arises when we create our floor is that our walls now, or our exterior walls, almost seem like the finish is like floating above them. So what I want to do is adjust my exterior walls so that they are lower and that they're going to cover this floor. So this floor here is 8 inches thick total, which means I want to bring these walls down 8 inches. So to do that, I'm going to hover over the edge of one exterior wall, and then I'm going to tap the tab key so I can click on all of the exterior walls together. And then I'm going to give them a base offset of -0 feet, 8 inches. and that way it'll bring that finish down on there. Next, we'll put in our roof for our building. Now, if I go into any one of my 4 elevations, I'll just go into the south elevation. We'll see here that our level 2 is at 10 feet, which in our building, that's not where our like top of plate was. So if we want to adjust that, we can click on where it says level 2, 10 feet, and then hover over until there's a box around the 10 foot, and we can click on that and make it 8 foot, 1.5 inches. And that way our building height now is going to be at the correct height. We could, of course, change that after the fact, but I'll just change it beforehand. And then I'm going to go into my level 1 floor plan to create my roof, which it's going to yell at me, or it's going to tell me that like I'm kind of stupid doing that, but we'll see in a second. So to create a roof, there's 2 types of roofs that we could do. We could do a roof by extrusion or a roof by footprint. I'm just going to do a roof by footprint, so I'm just going to click on this button here. And when I go in there, Revit is telling me, hey, you're on the lowest level of your building. Is this really where you want to make your roof? Which it's right, that's not where I want to make it. So I'm going to say, thank you, Revit. I would like to go on to level 2. And I'll click yes. And then for my roof type, I'm just going to use the wood rafter 8-inch asphalt shingle one that they give us in here. And I won't make any modifications to it. So I'll just use this one. And again, I'm going to hover over one exterior wall, tap tab, and then click to make the whole building footprint. I'll hit escape a couple of times, and then I'll click on these 2 lines to delete them. So I'll click on this one, I'll hit delete. I'll click on this one and hit delete. To bring these 2 together, I'm going to use that trim tool. So that's TR, and I can click on these 2 lines to bring them together. And then I'll hit escape a bunch of times. Before I go make my roof, what's going to happen right now is if I click the green check, it's going to make a hip style roof. All 4 of these have a slope defined to them. So I want to get rid of slope on all of the sides except the left side. So I'm going to hit escape a couple of times. I'm going to highlight these 3 walls or these 3 edges, and then I'm going to uncheck define slope for it. Now, finally, to make my roof, if I click on this one here, we'll see that it has a slope of 9 inches over 12, which is going to be way too steep for us. So I'm going to change this to 3 inches over 12 inches. And then I'm going to hit my green check. And it's going to look like nothing happened. But if I go into my 3D view, we now have our roof in there. I want to bring my walls up to meet that roof. So I'm going to hover over one exterior, tap tab, and then click so I get the chain of all of these walls. Then I'm going to click on attach, attach top, and then I'll click on the roof to bring those walls up. Now a problem we have is that we can't see inside our building at all because we have a roof on it. So in our 3D view, if we want to look inside of our building, we can check off this section box option. And then I can click on this box that pops up, and I can use that to pull parts of my building open. And I could pull it open or cut it open vertically. I can cut it open horizontally. And I can also cut it vertically through this one as well. So there's a couple of different ways we can cut it. While I have it sliced open, I'm also going to click on this wall here, attach top, click on my roof, click on this wall here, attach top, click on my roof for it. So that way all of my walls now are attached to the roof. Then the last thing we'll do in this video is we are going to add some ceilings to our building, and there's kind of 2 different ways we can go about it. So I'm going to go back into my level 1 floor plan, if it'll let me. There we go. So in my level 1 floor plan here, I'm going to use the ceiling tool to create a ceiling, which doesn't have a keyboard shortcut, but it's this button right here. By default, it wants to create a ceiling that's going to be a 2 foot by 4 foot acoustic ceiling tile. So I'm not going to want that. So I'm going to go into edit type. I'm going to duplicate it and I'm going to call this one like gypsum wall board on wood joist. And then I'll click on edit structure. And then for my core boundary, I'm going to make this, let's make it a 2x6. So I'll make it 5.5 inches thick. And for my material, I'm just going to do wood joist. There it is, this wood joist rafter layer. And then for my row 4, where we have our finish, I'm just going to make it drywall or gypsum wall board. Then I'll click OK. And then I'll click OK. And then I'll click OK. Now, to do our bathroom in our drop ceiling here, where we have this height of 8 feet, we can use this auto, where I then can click in here, and then it's going to warn me. It says none of the elements were created or visible in this floor plan. It says none of the created elements are visible in floor plan level 1. That's because our floor plan cuts at 4 feet and our ceiling right now is at 8 feet. So it's what this is telling me is, hey, we made your ceiling, you just can't see it here. If I go into my 3D view and I hit escape a bunch of times, I can actually use my section box here to cut it open and see that I do in fact have a ceiling now sitting at 8 feet tall in there. Now for my ceilings in the rest of my building, I'm going to have to do it a little differently because they have a slant. They follow along the roof slant in there as well. So for those, I'm going to go still in the ceiling tool. I'm going to go into edit type. I'm going to duplicate this and just say gypsum wall board only. And then I'm going to edit my structure. I'm going to delete the layer that was inside the core boundary. And then I'm going to move just this finish of gypsum wall board up in there. And I'll click OK. And I'll click OK. And now when I go to create my auto ceiling, I want to try something. So I'm going to experiment something in this video. So I'm just going to click and auto create a ceiling here, click auto create a ceiling here. Because I want it to have a slope. I don't know if this is going to work. I've never tried it this way before, but I do have a way to do it if it doesn't work. So now when I go into my 3D view, I have a roof in there, but it's just not sloped the way I want it to on this ceiling. So what I'm going to do is use a line to kind of bring it so that it is going to sit flush with there, because this is just gypsum wallboard in there. So I'm going to use keyboard shortcut AL for the align tool. I'm going to orbit around in this section cut view so I can click on this part of the roof, and then I'll orbit around so I can click on this face of it. And it says can't change the plane of the ceiling sketch, so bummer. So it looks like I can't do that way. So let me just delete this ceiling. Let me pull my section so I can look in the other room. Click on this ceiling and delete it. So I have a backup plan of how I would typically do it, and maybe I've already tried that previous way before, but what we're going to do then is create a ceiling. Instead of doing an automatic ceiling, we're going to create a ceiling sketch. And I'm going to use the rectangle tool to just put a ceiling just inside my room. And then I'm going to apply a slope arrow from one side to the other. And instead of specifying a height at tail, I'm going to specify a slope. I'm going to give it a slope of 3/12. And then when I click my green check and I go look 3D, it might have an offset issue a little bit, but we should be able to fix that. Boom. Oh, see, yep. For some reason, it's hanging out all the way up here on top of my ceiling. So now I should be able to do an align of this roof's face to this ceiling's face, and that way my ceiling is inside my building. Let's go back into our level 1 floor plan. And let's do another ceiling. So again, that's going to be the ceiling tool. We don't want automatic. We're going to do a sketch. Whoops. Let me click the rectangle tool from face to face. And then slope arrow from one edge to the other. Slope, and let's put that height offset at 0. I think that's why it was up there. And then 3/12. And click finish and look at it 3D. Let's pull this out a little bit more. And so now we have that roof there. But again, we're going to do an align of, let me orbit so I can see underneath, of this face flush with this face. And then that locks that in there as well. And so now I have a ceiling, or a cathedral style ceiling, in both of those rooms. I'll hit escape a bunch of times just to get out of the ceiling tool. I'm going to leave my section box active just because I use section box quite a bit when I'm working. And then I'll make sure to save my work. And then I'll see you in the next video, in which we are going to put in a foundation and a site.